Yay. Hello. Welcome, everybody. It is webinar number 6. We are super excited. We're just over the halfway hump here. My name is Meredith White. I'm in Gwinnett County Public Schools in Metro Atlanta, Georgia. And hopefully she's either this way or that way on you. I'm above her, so hopefully it's one of these directions. But we have the fabulous Ebony Thornton tonight. And we're going to talk about just a little bit of everything, honestly. Is it perfection? Is like what are we doing with all of the things that we're teaching, with how we're teaching, but also how are we framing things? And all of this is so important when we look in the context of how we're approaching our classroom day to day. I introduced myself, as I said. Ebony, will you tell us where you are and what you're up to these days?
Absolutely. So, good evening, everyone. Buenas noches. Bonjour, sawe. Guten Tag to whoever will be watching. And my name is Ebony Thornton. I am a Spanish teacher. I work in Gwinnett County as well with Meredith. We're about 20 minutes apart from each other, down Sugarloaf Parkway a little bit.
So close.
And 316, she is at Collins Hill High School. I am at Grayson High School. I have been teaching there for 7 years. I just wrapped up my 21st year of teaching and my second year as department chair of the World Language Department at Grayson. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yes, which is amazing. Also, you saying 7 year, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess so. Like we came, you came to Gwinnett, and then for me, it was coming back, and we were at like orientation at the same time, which was bananas.
Yeah.
I was like, oh hey, how are you? Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
we have a selfie, I think, in front of like the central office. Oh, what a big place.
And you had your page boy haircut.
Yes, I had was slowly working my way up to go like, should I go short? Okay, maybe. So yeah, we did kind of like a bob beforehand. I don't know what I'm gonna do next. Maybe I'll go back. We'll see what happens. Next time you might see me like, oh, whatever. But I might work my way kind of back out there. Yeah, that's crazy. So as department chair, and I've said this recently in different settings, but like on different podcast things or different like webinar things, when we look at, like again, your title for tonight, Perfección o Personalidad, like when we look at different ways that we kind of reflect on who we are, where we are, why we are, like all of those kind of things, and you look at yourself as department chair now, does any of that kind of like come together for you? Like I think of myself when somebody says, well, you're a leader, and it was like, no, I'm not even like department chair. Like I think of very like official leader roles. Does that feel weird to be like officially department chair? And does any of that kind of personalidad or perfección like kind of come into play?
Percent, because I joke a lot that for a while, I don't know if you've ever seen the meme of Kermit the Frog where he's looking around and it's like me looking for the other adult to answer the question, but then I realized, wait, no, I'm the adult. And I've been teaching for 21 years and I'm learning new things every day. But at the same time, it still feels odd that I'm considered a veteran, you know, or that I when they put the committees together for teacher leaders and leaders in their craft, and I'm there. I said, "Wait, are you sure about that?" Because I just never thought of myself in that capacity. Because I think when we hear leader, there is, I don't know if stigma is the right word, but we have an expectation or
Absolutely.
visuals in our head of what leaders should look like. And it's kind of funny that you said when we talked about personalidad or perfección, I always thought that leaders should have traits of not necessarily perfectionism, but be very ABCD. This is how it's going to go. And I was told, and first off, when you think of personalidad, for anybody who's not worked in a corporate setting, there is a term called for anybody who may not be familiar with it, stems from the phrase personality hire. And in the
Mm,
corporate world, the setting it's kind of a mixed bag as far as, is this a compliment or is this an insult? Because the assumption is that you are great for work morale,
mm,
when it comes to like department or team competitions, you're going to be there. Tacky sweater day, you're going to make sure everybody's got something to wear. You are good at soft skills, but sometimes those soft skills that you're so strong at can supersede your actual abilities.
yep.
So they think that you're great and fun and make everybody like enjoy coming to work, but sometimes they think you're not actually like effective at your job.
Oof.
So yeah. So in a way, it has been kind of validating to be in the role of department chair, because I get to kind of flex a muscle that I really didn't know I had,
Mhm.
and grow it and develop it, but still also make sure to do the little things to make sure that everyone in my department and my course team feel seen, feel appreciated, um, and make the workplace enjoyable, because we're there during the course of a school year, you're there 8 hours a day.
Oh yeah.
And it should
Oh,
be an enjoyable experience. And if you don't, I know we don't like to think about likability at, as depending on your age bracket, because you and I were literally, we're
right.
just a couple months apart.
But
So
like,
you are at that age where we're kind of on the cusp of, yeah, we can just do the job, doing the job, but we'd like to enjoy it as well.
mhm,
And you
yeah.
know, Gen Z millennials, if they don't like it, they're not, good luck.
Mhm.
Basically, that piece. No, because that enjoyment and that
Yeah.
fulfillment piece is very much a part of what leads them to choose a career. For us,
Yeah.
that's more like great, we just are kind of, is the salary good? Are the benefits good? Benefits
Yeah.
package, is the team good? And if we like the people and it's cool and it's fun, that's like sprinkles on the cake.
Right.
The cake is the actual stability of the job. The frosting is the benefits. Oh, and the people are cool and I have fun. Okay, that's sprinkles. That's a bonus.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and like you said too, like it's like, yeah, exactly. Like the expectations of, what you're going to put into it, where you're going to go, what it's going to do for you. And then also like what I've thought about recently too is like how long you stay in it, meaning like, because I was raised, you don't quit things. You signed up for volleyball, you're gonna see it through the whole season. That's obviously how that's gonna go. Barring the unforeseen, that's pretty dramatic. Otherwise, no, you're in it for the thing. And just those different, like you said, like those generational differences of being like, or just sort of reconciling, what did that mean? Like I was raised to not quit things, then you're like, oh, but I really like, I don't want to do homecoming anymore, or I don't want to coach blah 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 anymore. But I was told like this is what was required for me to be a good teacher, or this was what was expected for me to like be doing a good job. And it's like, what does that mean for whom? Who's checking, first of all, whose criteria are you so you know like convinced matters? And like what is happening? Is it your administrator? Have they literally said, Ebony, you have to sponsor this club or you're not going to work here anymore? Pretty much no. I've never had that experience where I've been highly pressured into doing things and sponsoring things and coaching things. And finally, when there was so much pressure that I said yes to all of them, then suddenly it was like, oh, you can't do all of these. Well, we need to take you off of, well, yeah, no, duh. Like, of
Mhm.
course you do, and I was like, yeah, obviously, like, I didn't want to say yes to all of this, but you made me feel like I had to. So
Mhm.
it's also that kind of funny thing of they're like, sometimes they're just checking a box, and it's like everybody's like, well, we needed to ask, but we feel suddenly like just pressured and pressed to like, please everybody. And it's like, I don't know that you need to do that. Do you feel like the same thing happens as department chair, even in a high functioning department and or for a high functioning department and within a district with a lot of support?
Sometimes, especially
Mhm.
if you're asked for supplemental and well, not, I mean, I think you can because the assumption is, if you're DC, then you'll want to do, especially in a system like ours, the leadership opportunities or
Mhm.
those
Yeah.
those um it's called ALP, but wanting to get your leadership endorsement, wanting to
Yeah.
get your gifted endorsement, wanting to do this, wanting to do that, or if you have a really good rapport with students, you're my favorite teacher. Can you pretty please sponsor this club? No one else will do it. And we've had,
I beg of you. Right.
and different things like that. So
Oof.
because when you are department chair, you are one of the faces of your school and of your school community. And I would imagine as well, if you were a current or former teacher of the year, that expectation is even stronger. And you know
Mhm.
that because you made it to the how you were a finalist,
Yes.
right? So,
So close.
I know. And I was one of the three finalists in my school. I've been
Mhm.
twice. And there was a weird, if this is going to sound strange, a little disappointment,
Yeah.
but also a weird sense of relief
Yes. Yeah.
because of all of the, not just the additional interview
Yeah.
and things like that, but, you know, having to go to every board meeting, having to meet with the superintendent,
Yeah.
having to take your concerns and your
Mm.
school's concerns to the superintendent and
Yeah.
those meetings. And they can get real tumultuous because depending on the school, each school, different
Yep.
schools have different needs and different things like that. So there's definitely a mixed bag when it comes
Mhm.
to knowing when to say, you know what, this is a boundary for me, I need to kind of just focus. And that's also, all of those things aside, I'm contracted to teach. So
Mm.
while I am department chair, that's just a stipend. My salary comes from what I
Right.
do in the classroom. So my primary responsibility still are the students that I teach every day,
Mm.
and understanding that how will this affect my ability to provide effective instruction? And if the answer is it could deter it or it could have a negative effect because I'm after school, I'm talking
Mhm.
to this, taking on something big like a homecoming or prom
Yeah.
or, those big clubs, your student councils and stuff like that,
Yeah.
depending on the time of the year, that encompasses
Mm.
everything you're doing for at least a couple of months,
Right.
trying to find DJs, pep rallies, ballots, homecoming courts, food, dress code, talking to the parents on the court, dress code. In my old high school, we did a motorcade with the members of the court. Register, yeah, it was a smaller school system, so they
Oh.
we did a literal tailgate from my high school to the adjacent stadium. Everybody decorated their cars and we did a motorcade.
Oh.
And then when because they had the football field had a track around it.
Mhm.
So after the girls were coronated, it was like a little mini parade. We put them in the
Ooh,
cars. So
fun.
yeah, it was so cute. And they made sure everybody had convertibles, so only certain kids could do it.
But of course.
And they waved, and it was very much like Boardwalk Atlantic. It felt
Thank
very
you.
much Miss America Atlantic City. It was so cute.
Yes. Elbow,
But
elbow, wrist, wrist.
right. So, but ultimately making sure my priority is my students, my team, and
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Like it and kind of in that order. You know what I mean? Like not to put yourself last, but I know we've talked about this and I think I've mentioned this with, and I'm just looking at like who's here now. I definitely have talked about this with Mary Ellen. And I think this came up with Regina a couple years ago, like looking at your life circumstance too, and looking like, is it easy enough for people to go, oh, well, Meredith can do it, she doesn't have kids or whatever. And I'm just saying that as something that has absolutely been said to me and probably been said to both of us. But like for me, where people go, oh, it should be it should be fine, you know? And like Mary Ellen said, like just a week of celebration and like it's Chamber of Commerce. That's all amazing and like beautiful and whatever, but you're like, also who's doing that? And I grew up in a family of teachers and coaches, and there were, yes, like you exactly, Regina, like you abuse your workhorses and then you buy new workhorses once those workhorses are gone. So it's like super hard to find people who will take on those roles. And I was raised in gyms, on fields, in classrooms, like because my that was like my upbringing was like, no, you're teaching and coaching, and that's what this looks like. Now, as a kid, you don't know anything different, so you're like, oh, okay, whatever, you know, and it's kind of fun, and it was fine, like it was great. And some of my biggest life lessons were learned through sports and music and all of those things that I got involved with as a consequence of that. But also, it's important to reflect on like, holy cow, what kind of time commitment does this mean for these people? And like, exactly, Mary Ellen, like as you said, like, or you don't work. Like, what's the problem? Girl, this is work. Like, are you freaking serious right now? And like you said, Ebony, before, like personality hire kind of things, if you're like, uh-oh, like if you're feeling self-conscious in any way, or you know, whatever, feeling any kind of way about like why you're at, kind of why you are where you are. I mean, I've been in situations where they said, oh, you know, we thought you'd be good to kind of level out things and really bridge the gap between, you know, the comprehensible input people and the traditional people. And I was like, this is not why I was hired, was like to be a kind of a personality, kind of a pedagogy hire of like, you should make everyone get along. But I think that happens a lot of times, or a lot of times we look at like who will get along with whom, and that's kind of weird, but also very realistic.
Mhm.
And I don't know like what we kind of do with all that, because it really is like puzzle pieces of personality, life circumstance, like it's all the things, and they kind of
Mhm.
stink when we look at them individually and go, ugh, I was kind of profiled because of this reason. But at the same
Mhm.
time, I kind of get it. And I don't know like how we kind of reconcile all of that if we do it all.
Yeah,
No.
and it's even more difficult when you work with, or it's, something you notice more with course teams.
Yeah.
And a lot of our cohorts in languages, especially the French, the Latin, the German, they're
Mm-hmm.
singletons. So they
Mm-hmm.
kind of get to be the master of their own domains. And maybe occasionally they may get to, of course, meet with other people in their county. They may have
Mm-hmm.
county standards that they're held to, but where you're on a course team, even if you're all different teachers, there's this kind of idea that you and I are on the same course team. If it's October in our Spanish 1 class, ideally, if a student were to go from my class to your class, they would be able to catch on, not in
Mm-hmm.
a way of uniformity, but in a way of consistency, for
Right.
better or worse. And that's another topic for another day.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you kind of make sure that the machine, all the parts in the machine they run effectively, so that the goal of educating our young people is achieved.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Without the what I learned recently as a term, because I was always like, oh, I'm good at stuff, and then they give me more stuff to do. And I didn't know there was a term for that, which was performance punishment. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what that is. Like that's, yeah, 100%. So if it's like, you know, kind of like Regina said in the chat, like abusing the hard workers, right? Where you're like, it's performance punishment. It's, hey, you can afford to do, or so we think, like, or so it seems, X, Y, and Z. Why don't you? That'd be great.
Exactly.
And then I think there's also this kind of underlying thing of like, I owe it to do, you know, the following things. And, you know, sure, like all of our natures are our natures. So if your nature is like, I'm going to do well, I'm not gonna, you know, do it halfway and feel good about that. Like I want to do it fully or not at all or whatever, that's fine. But I think the system as it is takes advantage of that. Are there any strategies you would say you found like over the last year and a half or so, like of kind of combating that and like as department chair being like, no, you're not going to take advantage of me, but also like because it's like a little part of it where we're with the like where we work, it is what it is. We work in a big place and there's going to be a little bit of that. So like, is there a way that you kind of draw a boundary that is healthy?
Primarily during coverage for if we
Mm.
have the last minute unforeseen absence.
Mm-hmm.
It's 5 a.m. You get the text.
Mm.
I feel horrible, and that because they filled it they're calling you at 5:45.
Oh.
It's not going. They're putting the absence in the portal. They're calling in a sub, but a sub's not going to get called because it's 5:45 in the morning. So, one of my big ones is we're right to Regina. We are a right to work state. So advocacy groups, yes. Unions, yeah. Um,
No.
so
Mm-hmm.
I think one of my big boundaries, and not just for me, but for everyone else, is respecting that planning time.
Yeah.
So if I notice that someone has cut, I have a schedule literally of coverage for
Yeah.
emergencies
Yeah.
because sometimes I'll be tempted because I have first and seventh. I'll just say, I'll cover first, I'll cover first, I'll cover
Right.
first. And then I said, wait a minute, no,
It's
someone
too
else can
much.
do it.
Yeah.
So I've just started saying, I have a schedule that we rotate. And then another one is just if I get asked for something, I often ask, okay, do you need my help with this? Or do you need feedback? Or do you
Mm-hmm.
just need an active listener?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes
Right.
I think there's that mental, I don't know if flavor is the right word, but someone is telling you something and you may go into provide a solution mode, but really they just kind of wanted to scream into the void a little bit.
Right. They just
And
want to vent and you're like, oh, okay, my bad. Sorry.
yeah, but if I kind of don't have energy for venting
Mm-hmm.
at that moment, I can say, can we circle back? Can we circle back to this conversation a little later? I have
Yeah.
something more pressing at the moment because sometimes it can be too much and you're just, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and too many things have so like I shouldn't say too many. So many things have so many people involved that then when you're like, I need to do X, I need to do Y, you're still waiting on an answer from this person. It's like hurry up and wait. You're kind of just like in a holding pattern. And then when someone's like, hey, can you also, you're like, no, I cannot, I don't. I first of all don't have the answer for you, but also I don't have it. Like I can't even handle this right now because no, like this is not what we're doing. Which is super, super hard. And in a big department, I think the challenges are very similar across the board. But talking to people who, yeah, are like Department of Three, Department of Two, I'm like, what does that mean? Because for the last 8 years, you and I have been in the same place. I'm used to a department of 14 or 12, and you're used to the same, like a department of 10 or 12. Like we're in a huge place with a lot of people and with a lot of support, which is fantastic. But it's also like, holy cow, like you said, maybe somebody didn't show up today and maybe people need X and Y today, but it's constant. Like the other stuff doesn't turn off.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how do you reconcile kind of being there for yourself and also not putting like too much on yourself, like, oh, I'm supposed to be, I remember I'm in charge, like I have to be the best, I have to be perfect, but also like being there for people. Is there a way that you kind of think of those together, or like a way that you keep yourself kind of in check of like, I'm enough, I'm doing this well, like, holy cow, what does this mean, like what am I doing? Does, if that makes sense.
I remind myself at the end of the day, I'm just one person, and that it does not say Ebony Thornton outside.
Mm,
It does not say Prince, that my title is not principal. My title
right.
is not district superintendent. My title is not DLI languages coordinator, nor
Mhm.
is my title superintendent.
Thank God.
So
Right.
yeah,
Ooh.
all I really need to concern myself with is just making sure the teachers have what they need
Mhm.
to teach. And then there's some things I have no issue. With my first year, I tried to fix and solve everything. Now
Mm.
I am, I think you need to talk to Varen about that. I think that's a Dr. Walker.
Right. That
I
seems
think
like a problem for somebody else. Right.
yeah, I will say, let me reach out to the other DCs and get some feedback. Let me
Yeah.
have you talked to John? Well, before John, have you talked to John? Have you
Mhm.
talked to Varen? Have you talked to Dr. Walker? Have you reached out to our, you know,
Yeah.
county superintendent? Have you mentioned it to Dr. Watts? Have you thought about addressing it at a board meeting? um,
Right. Literally
so
anywhere.
yeah. So if it's not in my build, I guess I can say if it's not related to the building, it is above my pay grade.
Mm. Yeah.
And even then,
Absolutely.
depending on if it's in the building, if it's not in our department and on our hall, it still may be
Mm.
above my pay grade. If
Yeah.
there's a discipline, if you're having discipline concerns or behavioral health, I may circle in a counselor or our behavior coach or different people like
Mm.
that. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Well, absolutely. And I'm looking too, like at Regina's question too, like being a team, being like, for PD and for observations, like we're in such a large place that it's hard to, the department chair even really is not evaluative pretty much. There's some formative kind of stuff. And if something kind of upsetting or problematic was happening, it's like, ooh, that would come to one's attention via that person pretty much. Um, but yeah, like for like for professional development and for kinds of things, yeah, it's like grows. Let's highlight people, let's check in. Let's say, oh, if it's April, you go, holy cow, we had these three people in our department presented flag, let's have them present here for a department meeting, like that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I was super lucky at Peachtree Ridge to have that, and just always kind of showcasing like the local people, without the pressure of sort of like the formal evaluation process in as big of a place as we are, and with district support and of course, like state organization support, like we just all of the things, like look anywhere and you can find whatever you need pretty much. um has there been a point where you have looked and not found what you needed, or like has there been a point where you're like, oh no, I don't think I'm the one for this, like I think I was chosen again? I come back to like Personalidad or Perfección, where it's like, oh no, like am I not the right choice for this position? I don't know if you felt that.
When I have had to, trying to think of how I can say this delicately.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think when in the role of department chairs, when it comes to giving your teachers, when it comes to the feedback aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
you get to do all of the growth and highlights without any of the punitive aspects of it.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes, I don't want to say teachers may need tough love, but there may be an instance where
Mm-hmm.
because you have to maintain a good working relationship, sometimes you may have to, this is someone that you work with, this is someone that's on
Yeah.
your course team, they're your neighbor, your colleague, and especially
Mm-hmm.
if you live in the same cluster and attendance zone, y'all may go to church together. Your kids may be friends,
Mm-hmm.
your kids may be friends. You may go to church together. You see them at the ball field, at the soccer, So you don't want to risk
Mm-hmm.
relationship capital
Yeah.
because you want to be the boss. So
Yeah.
sometimes I think you need to know when to kind of if you have some concerns, or if there have been things that you've seen where you've seen more grows than glows, reach out to um, the department, reach out to behavior coaches, reach out to instructional
Mhm.
coaches and say, I think I need to circle in and see this through some other eyes, just to make
Yeah.
sure, because because it can feel like if it's coming from me, it may not have as much validity as much as if it comes from other people.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Well, and it's so weird too, because I've been in that situation both in our district and in other districts where I've been like presenting to say the same thing their like supervisor has said, but they're like, well, I guess they need to hear somebody else say it, and you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. So it's that weird thing of like you're never a prophet in your own land. And also, like, that's so silly because you're like, guys, I support like I'm here for you. Like I am the liaison. I am the in between. I am not, evaluative formally really. Like I am all the things and what like pay attention guys, like come with me because I'm trying to help you out here. And it can be hard. You can have some really resistant people that for whatever reason go, no, I don't know about that. Or I don't know about like whatever, if it's an initiative or if it's an approach or whatever. I don't know. It's super interesting. And like Regina said in the chat too, like people say they can take constructive criticism, but can
Mhm.
they? And it can be really hard to do so, like to really, really do so. Um, and do so vulnerably and productively and just like all the things and be like, all right, Ebony, here we freaking go. Like I'm
Mhm.
about to be like I have so many goals this year and I'm about to tell you what all my goals are and I'm super nervous to do that, but like here we go and I'm excited, but I'm nervous. I can think of one of the biggest growth opportunities for me professionally, which was really a setback. And it was being given or put on a professional development plan. And it was like, I mean, which most people would say, I mean, this was like 14 years ago. Like most people would say, that's a hop, skip, and a jump from being fired. And it's like, well, sure, maybe. Or it's you're also like you're kind of backup to be kept, like to be rehired because how are you going to approach it? It's like giving a student like a remedial kind of opportunity. And you go, all right, dude, here we go. Like you've got a 60 or a 50, like we're either going to do this or we're not, and like these are your choices and you're
Mhm.
going to actively choose them. To me, a professional development plan or anything kind of like that is that same thing. It's an active choice, and it's like, all right, you choose your fate, kind of,
Mhm.
like one of those novels where you choose the ending, like for better or for worse. And I was so mad to have been given that I was like, oh, bring it on. Like my competitive, just like, oh, it's about to be on. Like they do not know what they have done. So I just observed the heck out of the best colleagues I had and just did all of these different things, but we never talked about it. I turned in all of my reflections, turned them in like in a binder like this, and was like super excited about it. And it was like turning in a project the teacher never graded. And it was super weird. And we just never like, and they were like, oh, thanks so much. Okay, goodbye. And that was it. And it obviously wasn't here where we work now. It was at a different district. And that was so weird to me because I was like, wow, what an opportunity. And I took advantage of the opportunity, but it seems like you all didn't.
They
And
made
I
you you were
guess,
seeing it as an opportunity to really grow and
yeah.
reflect. They just made you check some boxes. And
Yes.
that is the
So
worst, because
weird.
to me, if you're put on a growth plan, some people feel
Mhm.
like it's teacher probation, but others can see it as, you know what,
Right.
this is a way that they see some areas
Yeah.
that we want to improve, or
Yeah.
or you're or they're or coaching, let's
Mhm.
say It's you know I love my sports. That after the first game of this, it's film review. It's
Yeah,
basically it's
literally.
film review so
Literally.
that you can get better for
Hmm.
later games in the season, for the playoffs, for the
Yeah.
championship. And they say, they're saying, you know what? We see some championship potential in you. So
Hmm.
we're going to do some film review. We may do a
Yeah.
couple of little practice drills. But to quote the greatest coach ever, Nick Saban, you got to trust the process.
Okay. We'll allow it. No, absolutely. Like it's an opera only because I love Nick Saban. Darn that Alabama. No, absolutely. Like it's and that's what I said is I was like, is it because somebody goes, oh no, like a colleague was like, oh, you're getting fired. And I was like, is it not what? Like, do you know something I don't? Like I was so naive in that where I was like, are you sure? Like I thought it was a professional development plan because it's called a PDP. Like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, what in the world? And then it was like, oh yeah, 100%. Like you said, like you choose how you see it. And that's how, so I don't know if that's nature, nurture, or whatever for a lot of people, but for me, it's a little bit of both. Like I was raised like, girl, you choose your mindset. It's a hotel or a house. You're either staying there temporarily or you're living there, whatever it is. If you're complaining, if you're feeling like crap, if you're, whatever, are you there? Like, is it a house or is it like, give me 2 days and like I'll move on, whatever? Well, then it's a hotel and we need to move on. Like, so it's that kind of a thing where it's like, yeah, like I got that and I was like, oh, my feelings are hurt. Like, because I like to do a good job. I want to feel effective. That is very like being productive and being perceived as effective, like image kind of thing, are very close to my identity. And so I'm just like, no, like I want to do a good job for me, but I also want you to realize I'm doing a good job, kind of thing. And that kind of hit all of those things. And it was like, oh, here we go. Like,
Right.
okay, ouch, whatever. And it was that perfection kind of thing, but also like even not being a super what I would have considered perfectionist, but just having a high level work ethic for myself and being like, no, this is like the expectation is the following. That still felt like, ugh, ouch, but ended up being the most I've learned about myself and my own teaching classroom wise. Like you said, literally like watching film because I filmed myself twice a week and I have not worn khakis since then. Like since I was like, this is not a cute look. We don't look good in this. Like retire it. So we retired it. 2012. Rest in peace, khakis. Because like not good. And watching myself and hearing yourself. How often do we go like, oh my God, is that what I say? God, gross. Like, is that what I sound like? Is that what I say? But so many other professions do that, like surgeons and athletes and all of these kind of high stakes professions do that. And yet educators, what is the first thing you say when you go, oh, record yourself? They go, I haven't done that since student teaching or since grad school. I haven't done that since my master's. And everyone kind of like freaks out a little bit, which to me is so like people don't realize how amazing they are and they don't realize what they're doing every single day. And I'm like, if you recorded like a little bit of that, like that's what kept me going because I would find these little clips and these little pieces where I wasn't annoyed with everything that I ever do in the history of ever. And I was like, oh, shut up. That was super cute. Like we
Yep.
had that little moment there. And that was really, kind of that anti perfection kind of thing.
When I was going through the teacher of the year process, one of the things they had
Mhm.
us do was record a lesson of
Yeah.
ourselves. And I was a little nervous until I watched it. And then when I watched it, I said,
Hmm.
hey, wow, I'm pretty good at this.
I'm pretty
So
good. Right.
yeah, it gives you that opportunity to it's your choice to how you respond to it. And again,
Mm, that's right.
be in your feelings in it a little bit because it can kind of feel like you're in trouble, quote
Yes,
unquote. But after you kind of have that 24 hours, use it, utilize it,
that's
and
right.
grow from it from there.
Yeah. No, I agree. I had my when it was like sort of given to me, it was right before Christmas. And I was like, okay, well, that was poor timing. Like, note to self, I mean, it was
Yeah.
like the Thursday before, and I was like, we need to not, like, noted, like, let's not ever give a PDP before Christmas. Um, but I get it. And like you said, a lot of it's perspective. I look back now, I'm older now than the AP was who gave it to me. Like, I get it, where
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, we're all on whatever journey. And leading is hard, and leadership is hard, and doing the right thing is hard, and doing the right thing for the right people at the right time is nearly impossible. I mean, because like it's also just really hard as yourself to articulate what you need. I'm a big advocate for like, what support do you need? Because for me, obviously for us in our district, like that was really impactful for me, being like, I need the following support, and being able to sort of like name it. And then people go, okay, well, yeah, we can do that. If
Mhm.
it's, I need a common assessment. Okay. If it's, I need, whatever money to go to a conference. Okay. Maybe we can make that happen. I don't know. Depends on your department. If
Yeah.
it's, I need you to leave me alone and just let me do my thing. Okay, great. Like that's also an option.
Exactly.
So we have a lot of options. And that's really, really nice. At the time, I wasn't confident enough, and I wasn't in a place where that was an option to be kind of confident enough about. But
Mhm.
but it was really like, that was really helpful. And that was really, I grew a lot in sort of like recording and reflecting and watching myself and being like, gosh darn, I'll show you about this PDP, take that kind of a thing. Have you seen kind of similar struggles in kind of leading, like in being like, oh no, I'm in charge now. And like now I have to have really hard conversations, which are great philosophically. And I'm like a fan of even the little, what's that little like thin little book called like Hard Conversations, or whatever, where I'm
Mhm.
like, absolutely, yes. But having them is a totally different thing.
Yeah, they're not very many of them, thankfully, in my time at Grayson. Now, I did have to have a couple reaching out to a fellow teacher when I taught in the middle school, because in the middle school, we're singletons, but we're also kind of combined as well. Because we all kind of fall under the electives department.
Right.
So there's there's the PE teacher, there's the computer science teacher, there's the home ec
Mhm.
teacher, there's the industrial technology shop, industrial, like everybody's kind of under one umbrella and one school of thought. And I kind of had to mention to one particular colleague of mine that, and they don't ring bells. So in middle school, they don't ring bells. But this particular person had a habit of always dismissing their students a little later than everyone else's. So by the time you've got you're ready to go, ready to get it going. Here comes that one or two little straggler, and it messes with the continuity. So no one wanted to do it because this particular person just they were so I kind of fell on the sword a little bit, and
Yeah.
I said, um, we have this certain allotted amount of time. We have to walk them back, we have to walk them back to their classes. We have to make sure it's the transition, it's our PBIS expectations. And it kind of prepared me for doing that
Yeah.
in my high school setting. But thankfully I really haven't had to do it in my capacity as DC. But if
Yeah.
I did, I would just kind of make sure that the person understood this is meant to be constructive feedback. It is not a personal attack. So don't take it as a personal attack.
Right. Well, and it's so nice that you're not, again, formally evaluative. So you're not like, hello, and this is going to be, because I think that's, as teachers, we get that immediate, like, kind of student mindset where we're like, oh no, everything, it's on your permanent record, kind
Mhm.
of a thing where you're like, oh, I'm in trouble. It's not that serious. Like, it's not, we're not let's calm it on down. Again, I'm your liaison. I'm your, I come in peace. I'm
Exactly.
coming on behalf of, admin doing X, Y, and also they're not that scary. I don't know. Have you found that? I found that in transitioning to now being the sort of, instructional technology support. Like when I was a baby teacher, administrators were like, oh, like amazing. And now I'm like, oh, you're just normal people. Like you're my age slash I'm older than you. Like that's
Mhm.
really strange. Have you
Yep.
found the same thing with department chairs and kind of like therefore that what's the word I want? Like almost like that, I don't know, breakup of like perception, like what you thought, and then you're like, oh, these are all, like you said before, like when you were like adults, like real adults. I can remember literally yelling out the classroom, like my first classroom, room H202. I could picture it like it was yesterday. And I can remember having pink eye, like crusty, gross, disgusting one side, and yelling out the classroom, help, I need an adult. And my kids in the room going, you are the adult. And I was like, girl, no, I'm not. Like, absolutely not. Because
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
because I was
Right.
22.
100%. Yeah.
No.
It's through, I am definitely with a lot of the administrators at my school through the proverbial looking glass where, there are a
Mm,
couple of them. I refer to them when I see them in the hall. I can say their first name.
hmm.
Can't do that with my principal, Dr. Walker.
Right.
Would never
No,
do that with the principal.
different.
But yeah, a lot of them I'm good with asking questions and what was their weekend like and
Mm,
how are the kids, it humanizes them in a
mhm.
way that I think for anyone who works in those kind of capacities,
Mm,
yes, they're leaders, yes, they are in a leadership position, but it's not like they're on Mount Olympus, it's not Mount
right.
Olympus we're talking about.
Right.
And even with Dr. Walker, I have noticed a lot of approachability for her in her first role. That's my principal, that her door really is always open, almost always open. So that's been really cool to kind of go from one side to the other
Right.
and realizing, and especially if they were not that far removed from the classroom, they can
Absolutely.
still relate to a lot of different things. Our Veronica Crawford, may she rest in peace. She was our language arts AP. I don't know if you remember Veronica from the time you were at Grayson.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful woman, and always made it a point. There were times that she would help her teachers grade she would get in there and help them grade essays if
Right.
they knew that there was one that was overwhelming. So I find that really, really cool
Yeah.
when I can see that the title, yes, they have that title and everything, but they're part of they are they are working with you to make sure that the kids get a quality education.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you said, like with you, alongside you, like that to me is absolutely. And I was so lucky at Peachtree Ridge. I mean, like to have a phenomenal department chair who, you know, wasn't afraid to have a hard conversation and wasn't afraid to say, like, are you sure you want to, X, Y, and Z? And like if it was a pedagogy, if it was a represent, like if it was an approach, if it was whatever, I always knew like you couldn't just go rogue and go to like a flag. Amazing, right? We're here
Mhm.
with flag, but like flag or scold and see some session that was just totally different than what you've been doing and just go, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to embrace that. Like I knew that for the better of the team, you couldn't just do that. You couldn't be like, that's it, I'm on my own. It's not that kind of place. And she would very like, I love that you have new ideas. I love that you're doing the things that you're enjoying, but like, bring it on back. I need you to also work with your people. And I think that's so powerful. And like what you're saying too, like of just supporting, like being right there, being realistic, not just kind of checking out or being aloof or going like, well, that's not my job. It literally is. Yes.
Mhm.
Like it is. You're in charge of, the department, and like that has to do with how you're promoting your people, how you're celebrating what you've done, like how I mean, we're in a great place that does that pretty well on its own, but like there's a lot to be said there.
Mhm.
Would you say that anything has your perspective changed in terms of that, like in terms of advocacy for a department, like as opposed to being a teacher in a department, now being department chair and thinking about all those things, thinking about being personality hire, thinking about being perfection, thinking about like all of that, where you're like, okay, how do we advocate also for languages in a way that isn't down people's throats, but is also like, hey, our department at freaking Grayson is doing amazing things. Like, how do we yell that from the rooftops?
So one of the big ones is anytime, and I'm very fortunate in a lot of ways because Grayson has one of the schools in Gwinnett County that feeds into dual language immersion.
Yeah.
So we're the French school. So and our current principal was at the elementary school. So languages are kind of already on her radar because she was at the DLI program at Trip. So she's now, I think, yeah, she'll graduate like when the DLI kids graduate in 3 years, she'll have been there, I think, the entire time they were like learning French at Trip
That's
and
crazy.
all that cool stuff.
Yeah.
So one of the big things is that when you have schools that have thriving language programs, your students are just more well-rounded. They are
Mhm.
able to communicate.
Yep.
They have all of these different things in their academic like portfolio that they can put into. Um, Also, if you want to bring it down to the level of the CCRPI effectiveness, I still call it AYP. I'm old.
Hmm.
Um,
Same. I'm always like, what is that? AYP? And they're like, no.
okay, so when our AP scores come out, generally, Spanish has been one of the top performing course areas consistently. I make sure that I mention that. I make sure that I say our AP scores are higher than the state average, higher than the national average. I make sure that I say, hey, we took kids to the flag spoken language competition.
Hmm.
We have one of the biggest numbers of groups there and to
Hmm.
go. And then when they get represented at the board, we put their pictures on, the school Facebook, the school Instagram. If one of when our German teacher, Mr. Schneider, took kids to German convention and they did stuff at convention, squeaky wheels get the most grease, and
Amen.
I'm gonna and I'm gonna squeak.
Hmm.
So I make sure that I do that by advocating for my people, because if you don't know
Mm,
what they're doing, then nobody's gonna, how will they know?
right.
Very few people know, this is just an aside, that Grace, the this year's past graduating class at Grayson, class of 2024, may have earned the most academic and athletic scholarships of any school in the county. It was like almost $40 million.
Bam. I was gonna say, wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you're like, if nobody
794 graduating
right.
seniors. So make make noise, make
Yeah.
noise,
Don't
be
be
that
afraid to be
person.
loud.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Well, I think that's super true too. And I look at some of the, different environments I've been in, and one of them was very toxic for different reasons. And at a different stage in life, I would comport myself differently in that situation, but it's too late. Um, and one of those things was that where I said, hey, so and so took students to, the Latin teacher took students to Rome this year. And so took classes for their masters and whatever. And I was met with, well, their work should speak for itself. I shouldn't have to. And I was like, girl, like, nobody knows. Like, sure, it should, I guess, but like, it's not going to. no one, like you said, no one knows what they don't know till they know
Mhm.
what they don't know. Like
Exactly.
you're, what are you talking about? And then when we look at, which we've talked about, ad nauseum in conference sessions and just everywhere, where what's the first thing you say when they go, oh, hi, what do you do? And you're like, oh, I'm a Spanish teacher. And they're like, I took 4 years of French and I don't know a thing. And you're like, first of all, I
All
don't
I know
care.
is baño and cerveza.
I know. You're like, congratulations. Like, I don't care. And also, that's not all you know, but like, whatever, So it's just, there's so many things that come wrapped up in that. And it's a lot. So if you have an administrator that is one of those people that's like, I just add O to every word and da da da. And you're like, okay, very funny. Like, also not helpful. We are in a place that also, like, in a district that, in terms of diversity, reflects the world. Like, we are in a globally reflective place where I'm
Mhm.
just like, you can't not value languages, and you can't not realize that you have, and I'm looking at my school and your school probably is similar, over 50 languages represented, like as home languages, and dialects are included in there. So that's,
Mhm.
a little bit of a nuance, but like, I'm like, you can't not realize that, right? And so they don't. So that's valued and seen, which is amazing. But it's also just like, yeah, like languages are important. All of this is important, and what we do affects so many more things than, like, are they moving on to Spanish 3, which
Exactly.
is also important, but like, there's more to it.
Yep, 100%. And that is the student piece of kind of the personalidad versus perfection, because I
Yeah.
think sometimes as language teachers, because we were the word nerds, because we like, we can tend to, whether we mean to or not,
Mm,
kind of prioritize those students that say everything, that just have the natural knack. Their pronunciation's good. When they say everything, they say it
no.
right. But they're being safe because they know that if they do this, they'll get a 100,
Mhm.
and they're engaging in, it's in a linguistic way, but ritualistic compliance, where they're just like,
Mm,
okay, this is the rubric. I say this, I'll get 100, boom. Whereas that kid that's got that real passion for it, everything they say may not be grammatically correct, but they're going to find the way to make themselves understood. Case in point, I was reviewing time with a kid. I'm doing a little tutoring on, for the summer,
mhm.
and I asked him what time it was, and he said, "Son las 2:30 más seis." And I understood what he was trying to say. He said 2:36.
Nailed it.
Now, better, new teacher Ebony, who was kind of like Janine from Abbott Elementary, who thought that I knew everything, would have said, no, son las 13:24. But I was like, no, you said what needed to be said. I understood what you were trying to
That's right.
say. And so that, I think, is what we need to make sure that we do as language teachers, is
Mhm.
make that space for those kids who have that love for it and would kind of be considered our personalidad. As you know, they're
Yeah.
always down for, they're always, they'll play Kahoot, they'll do baile viernes, they'll do
Mm,
all that stuff. They're asking,
yeah.
they send you playlists of songs because they listen to Spanish music outside of class. So they
Right.
send you a Spotify. This is true, a true story because it happened to me this year. They
Right.
literally send you a Spotify playlist, and it's got everything on it from like Selena to Bad Bunny to even she likes Ivan Conejo for some reason, and
Hmm.
he's like the guy. He's like a guy Mexican Lana Del Rey, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. So
Yeah.
not really.
Mm.
I mean, it's an
Not for
acoustic
everybody.
boy. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a real acquired kind of taste, but there's that interest there. So I'm not going to stomp on that interest and stop
Right.
that interest because, you know, I've had an in. I've got a hook for her
Yes.
doing that content. And so
Love
that's
it.
what I think a lot of times in these performance-based content areas, those of us who are
Mm.
experts in the field, sometimes if we're not careful, we might not be the best teachers at it because we're so focused on the
Oof.
perfection piece
Yeah.
that we don't understand there's a little bit of a mess. So like
Oof.
a great musician could be a horrible elementary school music teacher
Yeah.
because the thought of 36 recorders playing hot, because
Right.
they cannot stand that sound of the
Yeah.
mess of creating music or
Right.
being in art, or that, and that's where the pedagogy and the science and the
Mm.
art of being a teacher comes into play. Like you could be a great scientist, you could
Mm-hmm.
suck at teaching, you could be a great mathematician, but you can suck at teaching math because you can't break down the
Mm-hmm.
process of an equation. And so when the student asks you, well, how do you do it? What do you mean you don't know? No, they don't. That's why you're there.
That's why they're
Or
asking. Right.
yeah, you can be an
Mm.
artist, and because you're an artist, you want it to be pretty.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't give, especially in
Right.
especially in those early stages,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you
Super messy.
yeah, it's just mess. And if you're not
Oof.
willing to embrace a little mess
Mm-hmm.
and a little chaos, they're not really going to grow. So
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's where we have to kind of tell those perfectionista students it's okay to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Give them a brave space to know that that if they don't say everything perfect every single time, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
Give that kid that just loves it and is going to say it, and it may not be 100% accurate 100% of the time, but they're still going to reach that language proficiency goal. And guess what? A lot of times, yeah, I know our linguistics teachers mine used to tell us all the time the horror of the fossilized error.
Whatever. Whatever. Right.
It's not that deep.
It's not that deep.
They will
Mm-mm.
100% be understood, because I've found that most people tend to be sympathetic listeners because they
Right.
understand about the ability to communicate. So yeah,
Right.
one year I let my gifted one student say agua melon because agua melon made more sense to them to say watermelon than sandia.
Right. They're like,
Because
great. Who cares?
I said I said, okay, y'all aren't wrong.
Right.
Or you're not wrong. I mean, literally, they are not wrong. So,
We'll allow it.
I said now for the test, say Sandia, but here amongst all of us, or
That's right.
saying that they're gonna have a 18añera to call their 18th that's what they're gonna
Yes.
that's what
Thank you.
one of them
That's what we're
said,
doing. Done.
yeah.
Decided.
And again, those are ways that that they're making connections because they're using it outside of class, they're creating a little slang,
Yes.
and
Right.
if all you do is focus on did you get Sarah and a star right? Did you say guapa instead when you
Right.
should did you say guapa when you should have said guapo? Did you say
Mm-hmm.
gustan when you should have said gusta? Did you use ustedes when you could have used vosotros or vos?
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna be so nervous to say
Mm-hmm.
it that they won't get the real meaning. And then on the flip side of that, yeah, that kid that's a perfectionist, yeah, they'll say everything right, but then they'll be done after 2 years. And then that's it.
Correct. And they can't do anything. And they'll tell you, I can't do anything. And you're like, okay.
Or you give them a off the cuff,
Mm-hmm.
spontaneous assignment,
Yeah.
and all Hades breaks loose.
That's my favorite is like seeing a kid in the cafeteria and you make weird eye contact and you're like, hola, Damien, and they're like, no, because they're right. Because we both know we're in the food unit and you're surrounded by your friends and you're like, cake, te gusta comer, and they're like, no, even though they're
Right.
sitting in front of 4 slices of pizza and you're like, literally pizza, just say me gusta comer pizza, but
Right.
it's so funny. You have to be so aware of that, like, especially when you're starting out, because what do we do immediately? Teacher brain is like, this is obviously the most important part of your day, so we're like, buenos dias, Damien, and we just like all of a sudden ambush him. And it's a 16-year-old kid in the cafeteria who's like, uh-oh, that's my teacher. Like, not really, like, we don't realize any of the context. And then we're like popping up on them, like with the target language. And it's like, lady, calm it down a little bit. I mean, that's kind of fun, but like, you got to realize like you said, some kids are just checking a box and it's not that deep. Like there are
Mhm.
so many aspects that we have self-imposed or like have been imposed in terms of like perfectionism, where it's like, yeah, maybe, or personality. Again, like you said, like maybe I do see certain people in class as a learner get ahead, and then I'm like, oh no, I'm not that. Therefore, I'm not going to get ahead. Or like I'm a perfectionist and I need to know what it is, bing, bang, boom. And then my teacher says, it's fine, like get as close as you can. And that's really disconcerting because I need to have it, this perfect way. Like that, there's a lot going on there. But we just see it as like, oh, hey, Damien, what are you doing? And they're like, it can be a really, really, really high pressure situation. And then all of those situations, like our class, if we let it, can be also really high stakes and really high pressure for no reason.
Mhm.
And why? For what? Who's checking? What are
Because
what
why
are we
should
afraid of?
because in all honesty, should a tell me about a friend little speaking
Mhm.
prompt for 45 seconds cause you anxiety?
Right. Like, should this be
No,
upsetting? No, it
no.
should not be.
My friend short, my friend pretty.
Right. Literally, friend short, friend pretty, friend nice, and we're like, great.
Boom.
And also we gave you a little strip of scaffolding. Like it's right. Just
Mhm.
it's right. Just use what I gave you. Like,
And then a lot of times too, if they have pressure, if and we don't know for those kids who are the perfectionistas, that they may have outside external pressure. If they had
yeah.
an older, at a school like Grayson, if they had the older sibling that got the one, because
Mm,
I've been there long enough that I am getting the siblings
mm,
of kids, and
right.
when you
Oof.
had, and especially if that sibling was like a top 10 kid or the valedictorian or the
Yeah.
salutatorian.
Hey, Miss
Oh,
Thornton, you got my brother. Da, 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 da. Yeah, how's he doing? You're like, he's
so
fine.
yeah. And or they flip it up and they say, he's not like me. And I say, okay, what do you mean? And that could, and so, because I could go either way,
Yes.
but I always
Anyway.
get
Mm-hmm.
I give all my students a clean slate 100%,
Mm-hmm.
but that all goes down and all comes down to so much of those intangible things that kind of go beyond just the content of what we teach.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I have, when I did a little thing with Tasha Austin, one of the things she said she noticed about me was that she says, Ebony, you communicate, and I don't know if you do it intentionally, but there's just this communication from you that any student in your class can be a successful language learner. And I do believe that.
Yes.
And I don't think, even if they have a deep South, whether they have a draw like mine, whether they are a emerging learner from a
Mm-hmm.
country, whether they're an emerging English learner from Afghanistan or Korea,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to meet you where you are because I believe I can get you to communicate. And if you are, and again, for that kid that wants everything to be right and
Mm.
everything to be flawless all the time, because again, they're in that this is school, this is my job, and they're just so used to, like I said, being, and when I talk about ritual compliance, that's versus authentic engagement, because it came up in some observations, ironically
Oof.
enough. Um, Sometimes we as teachers think that what we have is engagement, but
Mm.
it is just
Ooh.
they're there, they're answering the
Oh,
questions because that's just what they're expected.
they're
And
checking a
then
box. Yep.
yeah, and not that every day at school should be a Beyonce concert because engagement
Oh,
isn't entertainment either.
right.
But
Oof.
you want to know that that they're
Mhm.
fully with you, and this isn't just like, okay, the principal's in here, so let's just look like we're doing something so she doesn't
Right.
get
Mm-hmm.
where they're kind of faking it, that they're really genuinely with you 100%.
Yeah.
They're all in.
Gosh, and that's so hard too. Like when you said ritual, I already told you today, but like when you said ritualistic compliance, I was like, like, because that's exactly what it is. Ritualistic compliance just felt so like raw to me. Like the
Mm-hmm.
words together where I was like, yes, I agree. Like that's exactly what it is. Um, And it's just hard, like when you think about all the things we're up against too. And like you said, where it's like, also, side note, aside from that, the fact that you just casually name drop Tasha Austin, like amazing. She's amazing. Like, why do we have such a field of amazing people that I'm just
Right.
like, do our math teachers like, oh my God, so and so? I don't think they are. Like, I
No,
don't think they are because we
no.
have amazing people like Tasha Austin,
Yeah.
who I'm just like, oh my gosh, like we have so much to learn from so many amazing people.
Mhm.
Um, so yes, what she said is absolutely true. And B, like it should be true for all, like yes, language again is supposed to be fun, supposed to be easy, supposed to be accessible, and it's supposed to be like, I think you can do this, and I'm going to make sure not to just say I think you can do this, but like pave the way for you to be able to do this. um and then for the people around, like at a school that's big and in a district that's big, to really like, I hate to sound buzzwordy, but like reduce that variability, because we can't, like you and I in our environments can't be, let's say we teach levels 1 and 2 next year, like it can't be a completely different experience between the two of us, but also the other people in our building,
Mhm.
so like they can't take level 1 with so and so, Senor Smith, and go, wow, that was great. Oh, I don't want to get Miss White, she's the worst, I've heard she's whatever, whatever.
Mhm.
Like they're going to do that naturally anyway, but we really need to work together to get that common experience of, it's the same amount of, and I'm just giving examples, it's the same amount of assessments, whether you take Chinese 1, Spanish 1, French 1, Arabic 1, whatever.
Mhm.
It's the same kinds of activities because we have the language labs. We're in a place that we're, lucky enough to have some technology that also facilitates listening and speaking and all those kind of things. Like, there's got to be some kind of, again, reduction of variability, um, because you can't just be on your own,
Yeah.
and that's kind of hard. So I don't know if you have anything that you've seen kind of as we wrap up here in terms of like students or teachers or just you as department chair, where getting people just to work together, like to that end or to other ends, where you're like, sorry, like I maybe where you came from, you were like the one such and such, but like I need you to work on a team, because that can be, education is weird in that it's both like a team sport and an individual sport kind of a
Exactly.
thing.
It's easier with course teams, 100%.
Mm.
And my former department chair, she was Holly Broadnax at the time. She's Holly She.
Whoop, whoop.
She gave this, and I'll use this analogy all the time.
Mhm.
If you go to Mellow Mushroom,
Right.
there may be specific menu items that, like, there may be a specialty pizza that the Mellow Mushroom in Conyers has, that the
Mhm.
Mellow Mushroom in Lawrenceville has, that the Mellow Mushroom, Regina, I know you're in the you're, I think Regina's in DC, so I'm just going to say DC, that there'll be little regional kind of things that
Mhm.
are at those Mellow Mushrooms, but at every single one of them, if I get a Greek salad or if I get a salad, the Esperanza dressing is going to be there. If I get a
Mm.
slice of pepperoni, I'll get a slice of pepperoni pizza. Like, I
Mhm.
shouldn't go, if I go into
Yeah.
um Chipotle, and if I go into a Mellow Mushroom in Conyers and I get an Esperanza, I ask for the Greek salad, they bring me a burrito, I'm going to be confused. I'm going
Right.
to be
Like what?
confused. So I think it's easier on course, course teams is a little easier, but I also think even for the teachers who may be the singletons in their school, that is where common planning across your district
Mhm.
can kind of eliminate some of that, because I
Yeah.
think especially, with certain content areas, it could be, German at one school could be completely different than
Yeah.
German at another school. And again, each teacher has their own different kind of pedagogical style. But
Mhm.
again, if it's like I said, if I go to, I go to Mellow Mushroom, pizza and salad should be pretty regular.
Right. Right.
So, and I and I think unfortunately, in the name of our individuality,
Mm,
too many of us are putting burritos on the menu that shouldn't be there.
yeah. Oof.
Because we like burritos and we think that we make a good
Right.
burrito, but that's not what
But
is
also,
advertised.
yes, I was, like I said, I was always, I know I mentioned my former department chair like earlier, and I was always like so grateful that she'd be like, because you can't quite go rogue in certain things. And it's like kids, you appreciate that boundary. You appreciate like, how far can I push it? Okay, cool. Right here. Here's the line. Or with a pet, like right here, here's the fence. Got it. Okay, cool.
Mhm.
That same kind of thing. Cause it's
You
like,
need those guardrails because it keeps you from
yes,
crashing.
yes. Otherwise, like, what are we doing? Otherwise, then you might as well be the only Spanish teacher somewhere or the only French teacher somewhere. Like, why bother? Why bother working on a team and sort of pretending or giving it lip service and being like, totally, and then doing your own thing? Why bother? And I always really appreciated that of like, no, like that kind of not being, she wasn't afraid to go, yeah, I like that idea, but like, don't forget we're going to do the same thing in the following, in the following levels, whatever. And I thought that was really powerful. So,
About
you know,
reminding you of your school, your setting, your culture, your student
yeah,
body,
yeah.
because you may see this really great thing at a
Mm-hmm.
workshop at school or at Flag, but that's a teacher that is an elementary school teacher who only sees her students 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes a
Absolutely.
day, and it's like a bilingual little small private
Mm-hmm.
school, and you're on a 90-minute block
Mm-hmm.
with almost 3,000 kids. So
Right. Right. And you're like, ha, ha, ha. Like, I can remember bringing an idea and she was like, tell me more about this like presenter, and I was like, oh, wait. It was like exactly like you said. I was like, well, wait, now that I think about it, like he is, oh yeah, they're at a small school in like Canada. And whatever. And she was like, okay. Like, and kind of yeah, because everyone's teaching, to me at least, everyone's teaching situation with their personal life, with their everything, like, is a fingerprint, with their language proficiency, with their identity, with their non-native speaker, native speaker, studied abroad, didn't study abroad, travel, haven't traveled, like all of these different things that make us and kind of form so much of our teaching identity. Yeah, absolutely, is like a fingerprint. And it's like, why would you go to a session and go, I can do it exactly like that? Well, no, you can't, because no one can. So let's figure out if you can make it work for where you are, or if you can't, and that's fine too.
yep, 100%.
Yeah. Ugh. Well, I think we've solved all the world's problems. Honestly, I think
It's a great way to spend Friday night.
I can think of no better way, like zero better ways. And I just looked at the time and too, like, thank you for coming into the after party. OMG. Like,
Mhm.
as Mary Ellen said in the chat, like, thank you so much. We are so
Welcome.
thankful for your time. Obviously, I'm always thankful for and I'm going to make up a word, professionalship. But also your friendship, because I, think of those kind of in the same thing. And like you said, we're so close, but we're in such a big place where you can get kind of lost in all the things that are going on, and then you don't see people and that kind of thing. So I'm just always thankful for everything you share and how honest you are and just transparent you are, especially on your journey. I mean, in all of the things, but especially in your journey as department chair, because for me, that's so refreshing to see, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I just assume like everyone else has it figured out and I don't. And I'm like, oh no, I'm the only one. And it's like, oh, thank goodness. That's so honest. And now I know what to do or like where to go, even though I'm not department chair, but it's like, I appreciate the perspective too. So
Yep.
thanks for being you.
Try.
Yay. I know, right? We try, we do what we can. And thank you. Oh, yes. Amen. Regina's like, same. It's like we're all doing the best we can. I know, it's just the best. Yay. So thanks everybody for coming. And I will post the recording and we'll do the things. And any last I don't know, sentiments or advice or feelings of, I don't know, points to resources or just anything that you feel people should have or should hear?
Well, I, of course, think that it's your student voice should kind of always be
Mm,
your your guidepost.
yeah.
Um, Especially your students, the population, the kids you got,
No.
should be there. Also, making sure that you do build community with teachers, but not
Mm,
just because I've seen as Twitter slash X, whatever you want to call it,
mhm.
has kind of hit this very rapid, tragic decline
Yeah.
that I think for a lot of people that was their community that you do need community and teachers need community, but your community can't be intentional about building community in your actual, if you can't build it in your school, build it in your system.
Mm,
I have a lot of aside, there's you, there's of course the
mhm,
people in my department, they're amazing, but Bora and Russell, who teaches at North Gwinnett, we share a lot of things. And
mhm,
so I have a lot of great resources. My friend Kristen, she's now an instructional coach, but she was a Spanish
mm,
teacher in DeKalb.
mhm.
So she's like 20 minutes from me. We're going to go see, we're going to a concert in a couple of weeks. So
Yes.
making sure that because that was one of my things is
Yeah.
in addition to uplifting and making sure Black teachers and Black world language teachers are seen. On
Mhm,
the back end of that too, back in 2020, I did a presentation at Skolt
mhm.
on March 7th, 2020. I will never forget the day.
God, right?
It
Imagine,
literally
like,
it
same.
lives it lives in infamy.
I
Um,
know.
and I called it the second win for the second half because
It's a great session.
yeah, it really was. But now, as I'm looking at it, I know that there are a lot of things that if I said those same things now, after what happened 4 years
Oh.
ago, some of them I don't know would land as
Oh.
well, But I think that the community and the building
Yeah.
of those teacher relationships in your actual local system, I do
Yeah.
think is important. And I think that is a vital piece.
Oof.
And there are a lot of great also I gotta find her because this is just an aside. I found, and she teaches in Atlanta, she is this fabulous language teacher on Instagram. And what is her name? First off, she has this program that she calls it Trap Lingua. So yeah, it's so what is her Ah, I'm going to type her. Yeah, she calls it trap lingual,
Mhm.
and she's from Louisiana. She's from Louisiana,
Okay.
so it is a way to kind of incorporate Spanish for because I can fully admit that I was very much middle class, suburban,
Mhm.
kind of enculturated, and so that's how I think. But one of the
Mhm.
great things I love about her, and I'm going to type her in the chat,
Yeah.
is she teaches in I believe APS. But what
Mm.
she does is that she does a lesson of the day, but she'll teach phrases like on my mama, on God,
Yeah.
things like that
Absolutely.
that I wouldn't that you would think, you know, are good things the students want to know, but you might not get to it in the course of a
Mhm.
school day or
Right.
and she does a lot of little cool meetups. So maybe if she does another one in
Mm.
Atlanta, I may slide through. So that is
Yes.
her.
Oh my God.
She's absolutely gorgeous.
Oh,
Um
text me immediately if you end
yeah,
up meeting with her. Yes,
and
absolutely.
so because that's one of the big things I love to do is I love to highlight other
Yes.
profes morenas that are doing awesome things. So her
Right.
Insta is in the chat. Um It's summer.
Mm.
It's so take this time, unplug, sleep, binge
Mhm.
watch all the shows, get
Mhm.
her, if you want to work out, work out. If you don't, stay in your pajamas and eat ice cream all summer. Do
Amen.
whatever you need
You do
to
you.
rest and
Yes.
recharge 100%. And just
Oh,
know you got somebody at 50 Hope Hollow Road in your corner, and I'm a email whatever away.
That's
And,
right.
Meredith can probably type all of my stuff
Yes.
in the, for anybody who needs to know anything. But yeah, if just keep doing what you're doing and know that if you are a personalidad, you're valid, you are good at what you do, your work
Mm-hmm.
matters. And
That's
if you're
right.
a perfección, it's okay to not be so perfect all the time.
Right. Right. And it's okay to lean on some personalidad
Mm-hmm.
or not and go, that's not me. And I don't think it will be. Okay.
Yep,
Well, you know, all the things, everything you said.
exactly.
Amen. And we will close with amen. Thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate you. And until next time, thanks everybody. What a perfect way to close out. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Yes. All right. Yay. Thank you.